parents, relatives, friends, guests, and fellow faculty, and graduates of the class of 2025. It's my pleasure to welcome you to Stanford University's 134th commencement exercises and to the diploma ceremony for the program in international relations. And for those of you who are fathers, I want to wish you a very happy Father's Day. I'm sure you know your sons and daughters are giving you the greatest gift that they can, to the end of having to pay tuition. So I'm Ken Schultz. I'm a professor of political science, and I'm the honored to be the faculty director of the International Relations Program. I'm delighted to be joined on the stage by a number of faculty who teach and advise in our program, and I'd like to introduce and acknowledge them. So Jasmina Boych, Rachel George, Britton Heller, Bert Pattenoud, Rob Rakove, all lecturers in international relations. Stephen Stedman, who's a senior fellow at the Freeman Spogli Institute for International Studies. Aiko Takeuchi, who is the Liu Dang Lecturer in Undergraduate Teaching in International Relations. And Amy Ziegert, who is Senior Fellow at the Freeman Spogli Institute, and Morris Arnold and Nona Jean Cox, Senior Fellow at the Hoover Institution. We're also delighted to have our keynote speaker, Larry Diamond, who I will be introducing at greater length later, as well as Rich Barton from the class of '89 and a member of the Board of Trustees. Since international relations is an interdepartmental program, many of the faculty who played a key role in teaching and advising the graduates are scattered across campus today at similar ceremonies being held by the departments of political science and history and economics, sociology, the Dorr School of Sustainability, and many more. We also owe a great deal to countless foreign language instructors, as well as faculty at overseas campuses. These links across disciplines and around the world are what give International Relations Program its vitality and diversity. Before we turn to our great lineup of speakers, let me just say a few things about the class of 2025, who you see before you here. We have 82 majors and 14 minors in this class. This is a very large number for us, actually, and I'd like to say that's good news, but a large number of international relations majors also tends to mean that things are difficult in the world, so bittersweet. They are also themselves an international group coming from 13 different countries. This year's graduates have shown language proficiency in Amharic, Arabic, Cantonese, Dutch, Farsi, Filipino, French, German, Hindi, Igbo, Italian, Japanese, Korean, Portuguese, Russian, Spanish, Tigrinya, Urdu, and Zulu, so literally from A to Z. And they have studied on every continent except Antarctica, from places including Accra, Amman, Australia, Beijing, Berlin, Cape Town, Florence, Hong Kong, Istanbul, Madrid, Oxford, Paris, Riga, Santiago, and Shanghai. 22 of our graduates are receiving honors for doing a thesis, either in international relations or in an interdisciplinary honors program. Their theses covered a variety of pressing topics, ranging from North Korea's use of cyber operations, how countries from Taiwan to Brazil to Kenya to here in the United States are being affected by the rise of China, and how people, markets, and even bacteria are responding to a changing climate. So we're very proud of them and all of their accomplishments. So let's give the first round of applause of many today to the class of 2025. So I'm going to go right to our speakers. We're going to hear from two student members of this distinguished class. Our first speaker will be Julia Lasiota. She came to Stanford from Lodz, Poland, specialized in comparative international governance, learned Arabic and Japanese, studied abroad in England, and double majored in history. She has spent the last 4 years asking big questions about the world and occasionally smaller ones, like why the on-call cafe only opens after midnight. She's still looking for answers, but she's learned to enjoy the search. Julia.
When I first arrived at Stanford, I couldn't wait to find the answers to all the global challenges of today and tomorrow, or however I might have phrased it in my application. In our first quarter, nothing seemed like how I had imagined. We still wore masks to lectures and dropped off COVID test kits, but everything seemed to be returning to that Camp Stanford golf resort-like normal that upperclassmen nostalgically described to us, the lost post-pandemic frosh. What I could have never imagined was that the next 4 years would drift only further away from whatever normal everyone seemed to have in mind. The world didn't exactly slow down after the pandemic. We witnessed humanitarian crises, democratic backsliding, disinformation, and wars. Ironically, the very things we thought we would encounter as theoretical case studies in our classes, we ended up living through. And yet, we kept trying to make sense of it all. Sometimes in disagreement, sometimes in tears, oftentimes with passion, and occasionally through the kind of jokes that only land when you're sleep-deprived and just a little too cynical from following the news. Some may call it chaos or polarization, but I came to realize that in the face of all this uncertainty, our campus didn't retreat. It leaned into having difficult conversations. I wasn't always ready for those conversations, but I genuinely began learning just as much outside the classroom as within it. These kinds of worldview-shattering conversation often came at the worst times, an hour before a paper deadline, the morning of my econ midterm, or during casual hangouts in the dorm or at the Uncle Cafe. At Stanford, any quick chat can turn into a debate on global affairs, especially if you have at least one of us, the IR majors, in the room. But what these past 4 years of classes and endless conversations have really taught me is that studying international relations isn't about finding perfect answers to whatever is troubling the world. It is about asking better questions and daring to keep asking them. IR isn't a toolkit, but a way of thinking. We aren't graduating with neat solutions in our back pockets to deploy at any next global crisis. In our time here, we learn to sit with complexity and question our own assumptions. We realize that the most honest answer to many questions is, it depends. We've gotten comfortable with holding multiple perspectives in our minds at once, realizing that two seemingly contradictory things can be both true depending on the context. We discovered that the urge to pick a side immediately often closes off the door to a deeper understanding that comes from sitting with ambiguity a little longer. In a world obsessed with hot takes and immediate reactions to everything happening in every corner of the planet, we learn to pause, to embrace nuance, and to resist the allure of thinking in binaries, unlike some of our friends in computer science. Speaking of friends, people love to corner us, the IR majors, at parties or family dinners. So what should be done about this conflict? What's going to happen with that election? There's this expectation that because we've studied international relations, we should have ready-to-go answers to every single crisis popping up on the newsfeed. But here's what IR has actually taught us. Some of the most costly decisions in foreign policy come from those who feel completely certain that they have all the right answers. One of the most powerful lessons I'm taking from Stanford is that it's okay not to have answers immediately, even if it feels like the whole world expects you to have one. What truly matters is staying curious enough to keep engaging with the questions troubling our world, even when they feel uncomfortable. Our class entered college in the shadow of a global pandemic, and we're graduating into a world that feels, if anything, only more unstable and uncertain. The challenges we'll face, both global and personal, don't come with instruction manuals either. Yet I'm certain that we're all equipped to navigate this uncertainty with thoughtfulness and care. We came here hoping to learn answers. We leave knowing that the questions matter even more. Let's be the ones who pause in a world that rarely does. Let's be the ones who think, who ask, and who listen. I can't wait to see where our questions take us next. Congratulations, class of 2025.
Thank you so much, Julia. Our next speaker is Malaina Kapoor. Malaina is from Redwood City, California. She specialized in international security, learned Italian, and studied away in Italy and Washington, D.C. She's graduating Phi Beta Kappa with distinction and with interdisciplinary honors in democracy development and the rule of law. She spent her time at Stanford studying the intersection of foreign policy and gender inequality. She believes the battle for women's rights is integral to our collective security and stability. Malaina will be going to Harvard Law School to pursue a career fighting against gendered legal systems that perpetuate systematic inequality. Malaina.
There are certain hallmarks of a Stanford IR student that make us easy to spot around campus. We congregate in Encina Hall. We always have a paper due. We don oversized shirts that declare we think, therefore, IR. We get push notifications from the New York Times. And any chance we get, we bring up the fact that we studied abroad. These are the traits that are visible from the outside. But when I think of our IR community, I think of something more fundamental that unites us. We read and research and roam the world driven by the basic idea that it matters what happens beyond our own borders. We feel a responsibility to understand the places that are furthest away from us. We've decided to run toward the chaos and complexity and even tragedy of this international system, instead of choosing to turn away. For so many years, like so many of you, I embodied this characteristic IR spirit of perennial engagement. As a kid, I stayed up past my bedtime listening to NPR and brought a duffel bag to the public library. At Stanford, I studied terrorism and dictatorship and war. I wrote a book about a gender apartheid regime so brutal, it haunted me every single day. But still, I moved forward because I believed there was power in bearing witness and danger in willful passivity. Last winter, though, something changed for me. After a year that closed with both personal challenges and political disappointment, I succumbed to the siren song of disengagement. For the first time ever, I stopped reading the news. I avoided discussions about agencies shuttered and peace deals squandered and alliances crumbled. And I saw national leaders and voters of both persuasions behave in the same way. It felt like I was part of a collective sigh of defeat, fueled by a pernicious question. Does the rest of the world really matter to me? My withdrawal felt like freedom, at least for a little while. I was consumed by only my own problems and aspirations, not those of entire nations and continents. If someone mentioned the news, I engaged for a minute and then shrugged sadly as if to say, these are the times we live in. What can we do? Still, underneath it all, I recognized that something was wrong. My breezy conversations started to feel perfunctory. My casual dismissals poked at me. I knew that despite my intentional indifference, the world was experiencing profound changes. To ignore them began to feel like a dereliction of some sort of inherent responsibility. Ultimately, it was the Stanford IR community that woke me up to the consequences of my newfound detachment. Faculty leveraged their personal experiences in Iran and Russia and DC to teach us how apathy is the fuel that sustains today's reigning despots. Classmates parsed our geopolitical climate over long seminars that began with resignation but ended with resolve. Friends reminded me that to lose interest in the world was to lose something within myself. Does the rest of the world really matter to me? It was this community that reminded me that it does, because despite the proliferation of wars and tariffs and ardent nationalism, we ultimately rise and fall together. Because when we ignore injustice somewhere far away, we issue tacit approval for humanity's worst impulses. It was this community that reminded me of the power that comes from engagement with the world, because global consciousness is the first step toward concerted action. It's this sense of power I hope we take with us as we step into the world. The power to bring the lessons of the past and the present to bear on the defining problems of our future. The power to hold evil to account. The power to understand and amplify and act alongside the freedom fighters, innovators, and everyday people who represent a promise of real change. In the offices and classrooms that come next for all of us, there will be people who relinquish this power and succumb to a belief that the rest of the world is no longer worth contending with. This sentiment can be infectious. But I hope we will all carry with us a different spirit that has infected us here on this campus. A spirit of curiosity, a spirit of ideation, a spirit of hope. Last Tuesday, I had my last ever class here at Stanford. To celebrate the end of the year, we met outside. We ate pizza. And as we were chatting, our professor leaned back in her chair and told us a story. She'd just given a lecture on international reporting to a local high school, and afterwards, a 17-year-old boy had come up to her, unconvinced. He told her point blank, "I just don't understand why I should care." That Tuesday, our professor threw this boy's assessment back to us. What would we have said to change his mind? For every student, the answer was different. Some discussed transnational threats like pandemics and climate change. Others talked about our shared humanity. It seemed like this question had been on all of our minds, and in different ways, we'd all found our way to a meaningful answer. Walking out of class that day, I felt a sense of incredible solidarity. Though we may have questioned it in our own ways, at our own times, we're leaving here with a firm belief in the power of international engagement and action. At a time when insularity is celebrated and globalism is decried, we've all made a commitment to a different worldview, one predicated on our unity, not our divisions. Today, more than ever, that's a commitment that takes strength and even courage. But it's also a commitment charged with urgency. Let us pledge to always look beyond our own doorsteps, to read about places we've never been, to find people who don't speak our language, to feel deeply for people we will never meet. Because this will be the key to our individual purpose and our collective ability to make real change in this unfinished world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julia and Malaina. Those were fabulous thoughts. So I'm delighted to turn to our keynote speaker, Larry Diamond. Larry is the Mosbacher Senior Fellow of Global Democracy at the Freeman Spogli Institute for International Studies. He's a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution and a professor by courtesy of sociology and political science. Professor Diamond's research focuses on the state of democracy around the world and on policies and reforms to defend and advance democracy. His latest book is called Ill Winds: Saving Democracy from Russian Rage, Chinese Ambition, and American Complacency. And it analyzes the challenges confronting liberal democracy in the United States and around the world, and offers an agenda for strengthening and defending democracy at home and abroad. Professor Diamond is a leader in many ways, as a scholar and a consultant, and I'm not going to go through all the many positions that he's held, just to say that we're super proud to have him here. And most importantly, he received his BA, his MA, and his PhD, all from Stanford University. So we're delighted to have Professor Diamond here for the 2025 Our Diplomacy keynote address.
Thank you so much, Ken. And before I build on the eloquent remarks you've just heard, and maybe destroy the microphone in the process, I want to thank Ken Schultz for his years of distinguished service as the faculty director of the International Relations Program and congratulate him on winning the university's highest teaching award, which you just heard, the Walter J. Gores Award. So I want to begin by congratulating our graduates, the remarkable class of 2025. You made the transition from high school to Stanford after the chaos of a pandemic. Your 4 years here were marked by thrilling advances in technology and the life sciences and disheartening divisions in politics and social life. You now exit into a world in which you well know faces existential challenges of climate change, species extinction, weapons proliferation, and artificial intelligence rapidly disrupting every aspect of life, if not life itself. If you were raised in the United States, you may now feel that you can no longer take for granted the personal freedoms and constitutional democracy that once seemed like the air we breathe. Sometimes a bit smoky, but mostly just there. If you have come from abroad, perhaps you have watched while democracy in your country has slipped back or been lost in the global recession of freedom over the last 2 decades. Or you may have come from a country in which people have not been free to speak, protest, and vote. Maybe one of the things that attracted you to Stanford and to the United States is that here, as the Stanford motto says, the winds of freedom blow. And now you may wonder, how long will that be true? There is no denying that we are at a global turning point. And as you leave Stanford, each of you are at a turning point as well. For the past 4 years, you've looked to us, the faculty and staff of this great university, to offer instruction, guidance, support, and I hope at times inspiration. In the years to come, and they are coming very fast, we will look to you to provide the new knowledge, the moral compass, the policy directions, and the civic engagement to meet the awesome challenges before us. A generation ago, the future stretched forward at a more measured pace. Now, as Martin Luther King said in his 1963 I Have a Dream speech, we are faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. I think you heard Katie Ledecky refer to this. This is no time for apathy or complacency. This is a time for vigorous and positive action." End quote. There are many ways in which you might feel the fierce urgency of now. I want to take the rest of my remarks to speak about the realm that reflects the major you chose, international relations. Let me begin with a story about the Hoover Tower. Bert will like this. This giant building in whose shadow we sit right now. Herbert Hoover was in the first graduating class of Stanford University, the class of 1895. He became a global mining magnate and then a public figure, overseeing and negotiating massive shipments of food to a devastated Europe during and after World War I. His experience in establishing one of the first large-scale international humanitarian relief operations in U.S. history not only launched his political career in the U.S., it also left a deep imprint on him personally. He brought back from Europe troves of files, pamphlets, newspapers, government documents, which would become the Hoover Collection on War, Revolution, and Peace, and later the research institution of the same name. All these masses of documents needed a place to be stored, and so the tower was commissioned largely for this purpose. That is why most of the tower's floors have no offices and no windows, as you probably noticed. Hoover went on to become Commerce Secretary and then President. The Depression hit, and he could not overcome it. His presidency was not successful. But he remained an internationalist. He retained a deep commitment to collecting documents that would help us understand the world and record its history. After his presidency, he remained devoted to the core principles of peace and economic and political freedom. These ideas are inscribed on the wall of the Hoover Tower Rotunda, with appreciation to the donors who made the construction of that awesome tower possible. The tower was completed, please note the date, in June of 1941. 6 months later, the United States was drawn back into a Second World War that devoured global peace and threatened to extinguish freedom. When I go to my office in the Hoover Tower, I walk past the inscribed words on that wall, and often I wonder, what must these donors have been thinking as they dedicated this tower 6 months before America's entry into the largest, most calamitous and transformational war in global history? They probably could not imagine it then, certainly not the scale of it, but they were at the edge of a hinge in history that would claim over 400,000 American lives and completely reshape America's role in the world. The Allied victory in World War II and the institution building that followed reordered international relations and brought the most dramatic strides for peace, freedom, economic development, and human well-being in history. Colonial rule came to an end, and large swaths of humanity were liberated to determine their own national futures. Billions of people were lifted out of poverty and into middle-class lives or previously unimaginable affluence. Diseases like smallpox and polio were eradicated, or nearly so. Authoritarian regimes still threatened peace. Famine, civil war, and terrorism still traumatized nations, but dozens of countries displaced dictatorships and made transitions to democracy, and the number of deaths from war declined dramatically. By and large, the last 80 years have been the freest, most stable, and prosperous in human history. Why has this been the case? The answer, I believe, is the liberal international order that was constructed from the ashes of World War II. Visionary policymakers in the US, Europe, and other allied and independent nations created the United Nations, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, the World Trade Organization, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and numerous other institutions to manage conflicts, secure borders, deter aggression, prevent trade wars, and control the proliferation of dangerous arms. We went from a world, as described by Thucydides, in which the strong do what they can and the weak suffer what they must, to a world in which the strong were restrained from temptation and the weak were at least somewhat protected by a rules-based order. Alongside these international institutions came new American initiatives to strengthen our engagement with the world. The U.S. Agency for International Development, the U.S. Information Agency, the Voice of America, the Peace Corps, the U.S. Institute of Peace, the National Endowment for Democracy, the Millennium Challenge Corporation. For the past decade or so, this liberal international order has been fraying. A tragic step along this descent was the first Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2014, in which the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin seized control over Crimea and part of the Donbass region. Now, since February of 2022, Ukraine, with not even a third of the population of Russia, has been fighting for its very existence in one of the most ruthless and senseless wars of the post-World War II era. There are not two equally worthy sides to this story. The Russian dictatorship is shredding the norms and challenging the institutions that have kept the peace in Europe for 3 generations. This cannot stand. Meanwhile, China's communist authoritarian regime is posing an increasingly worrisome challenge to peace and security in the Indo-Pacific region, With its claims to sovereignty over virtually the entire South China Sea, its mounting intrusions upon the fisheries, natural resources, and coastal waters of other Asian nations, and its steadily increasing campaign to pressure, encroach upon, and wear down the people and government of Taiwan. Taiwan is not only a vibrant democracy, but a crucial piece of the security architecture that ensures a free and open Indo-Pacific region. It is also a world leader in technology, as some of us will find when we visit there shortly, producing the vast majority of the world's most sophisticated semiconductors. Any use of force by China to end this miracle would represent the most serious threat to global peace since World War II. But we are inching forward toward that perilous scenario. More than at any time in decades, U.S. partnership and leadership is vital to sustaining global peace, prosperity, and security. But these goals cannot be achieved by savaging the vision and institutions of the liberal international order in pursuit of a short-sighted agenda of America first. Consider foreign aid. The $50 to $70 billion that the U.S. has been spending annually on foreign aid is barely 1% of the federal budget, but it saves and extends lives, prevents famines, mitigates violent conflict, strengthens government, creates new markets for American goods and services, and generates political and moral capital that the United States can draw on to help steer the world away from poverty, chaos, pandemics, dictatorship, and war. The $882 million that the U.S. spent on global media last year was barely 1% of the federal budget. For the cost of 5 or 6 advanced fighter jets, we were able to provide independent news and information to people deprived of press freedom and to counter the anti-democratic and anti-American propaganda of authoritarian regimes. Now all of this is being recklessly dismantled. You don't have to be an idealist to recognize why these modest investments are deeply in the American interest. The fastest growing economies and populations in the coming decades will be in the emerging market countries, especially in Africa. When we level the information playing field, promote democratic values, and partner with them to develop as open markets and rule of law states, we build the kind of world in which America thrives. On top of all this, we are now risking wrecking the most important foundation of American prosperity and global influence, our leadership in science and technology. The drastic cuts in research funding for universities and the proposed tax increases on their endowment earnings threaten to destroy American global competitiveness at a time when China is pulling ahead in scientific research productivity in an estimated 37 of 44 fields of advanced technology. Our ability to compete in scientific discovery, technological innovation, and the entrepreneurship that flows from them depends heavily on international students, who comprise the majority of U.S. graduate enrollments in computer science, math, and many fields of engineering, and I strongly suspect not a trivial proportion of our graduates here today, Ken. In addition, higher education is one of our biggest export earners. International students pay tuition and fees in the U.S. that bring in $50 billion a year to reduce our trade deficit. And they start and run companies. Fareed Zakaria recently noted that 5 of America's top 10 companies are run by immigrants. But now the siren song of America First threatens to place America second, third, or fourth by slashing visas for international students and sending them away at precisely the moment they are most valuable, after they have completed their education. If you are an international student, I hope you will consider staying here in the U.S. and that your fellow students will work in the coming years for the policies to keep you here. so that you can join in the continuing transformative pursuits of scientific, technological, economic, cultural, and democratic innovation. Wherever you come from or head to, I hope all of you in the class of 2025 will be in these crucial years to come and throughout your lives informed advocates for international cooperation and vigorous defenders of the institutions and funding we need to promote peace, improve health, enhance incomes, and defend the rights of people everywhere to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Let me close with the words that inspired me to pursue a globally engaged career. 64 years later, John F. Kennedy's inaugural address speaks again to a new pivotal moment in the history of America and the world. And I now quote, "Now the trumpet summons us again to bear the burden of a long twilight struggle, year in and year out, rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation. A struggle against the common enemies of, I will say, humanity, tyranny, poverty, disease, and war itself. Can we forge against these enemies a grand and global alliance, North and South, East and West, that can assure a more fruitful life for all humanity? Will you join in that historic effort? In the long history of the world, only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger. I do not shrink from that responsibility," John F. Kennedy said. "I welcome it. I do not believe that any of us would exchange places with any other people or any other generation. The energy, the faith, the devotion we bring to this endeavor will light our country and all who serve it, and the glow from that fire can truly light the world." Thank you.
Thank you, Larry, for those really inspirational words. So we're now going to turn to the main event, which is the awarding of the diplomas. As I stand up here and pass out diplomas, here to read the names and to tell you a little bit about each of our graduates are three important members of our program. Rachel George, who's a lecturer in international relations. She teaches on international law and human rights and also in our new capstone program. Robert Rakove, who's a lecturer in international relations who teaches a number of core classes on history and American foreign policy. And Britton Heller, lecturer in international relations who teaches on international law. So as their names are read, the students are going to come up, receive their diploma, going to stand with me and Professor Diamond for a photo opportunity. And I should add that if you open your diploma case and find that there's no diploma in there, that may be because you didn't do the last assignment in one of your classes. No, it's actually, your diploma will be mailed to you separately. All right. Begin, Rob.
Anna Agarwal is from Newton, Massachusetts. She specialized in international security, learned Spanish, and studied abroad in Spain. She was a Hoover National Security Affairs Fellow Program mentee, a teaching assistant for Stanford GSB Essentials of Strategic Communication, and a director of business partnerships for Stanford Fashion X. Most memorable was experiencing history in real time when hearing Ukrainian President Zelensky speak via Zoom shortly after Russia invaded Ukraine. Anna plans to join McKinsey & Company in New York. Syed Muhammad Obad Akhtar is from Lahore, Pakistan. He specialized in Europe and Russia and international history and culture, learned German, and studied abroad in Germany and England. He was a research assistant for Hoover and the Stanford Institute for Economic Policy Research. Syed plans to pursue a PhD. Yeah. Elisa Alexanian is from Pasadena, California. She specialized in international history and culture, learned Armenian and German, and studied abroad in Germany. She was president of the Armenian Students Association and a counselor for the Bridge Peer Counseling Center. Most memorable was hosting an on-campus Armenian-Turkish activist and former member of the Turkish parliament, Garo Paylan. It was incredibly meaningful to witness how deeply his presence resonated with the nearly 100 attendees. Elisa plans to live in Armenia for a year and then attend law school. Okay. 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 Lauren Amaturo is from Santa Rosa, California. She specialized in economic development, world economy, learned Spanish, studied abroad in Chile, and received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence. She was a Hoover Geotrends and Immigration Policy Lab research assistant and a course assistant for the immigrant experience in everyday life. Most memorable was participating in the IR Capstone Policy Practicum with Community Partner Accountability Council and facilitating intersectional advocacy for people harmed by internationally financed projects. Lauren will be a summer intern at the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City and then begin a Foreign Service Master's at Georgetown University. Alina Anand is from Tustin, California. She specialized in Middle East and Central Asia, learned Arabic, studied abroad in Turkey, and minored in human rights. She received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence, graduated Phi Beta Kappa, and with distinction. She received Stanford in Government and Human Rights Summer Fellowships, was co-president and financial officer for King International Development Association, and program coordinator for the United Nations Association Film Festival. Most memorable was working as a fellow at the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights Refugees headquarters in Geneva. Alina will explore international and national refugee law and policy as a John Gardner Public Service Fellow. Yeah. Chelsea Arellano is from Los Angeles, California. She specialized in social development and human well-being, learned Spanish, studied abroad in Spain, and minored in creative writing. She received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence and graduated with distinction. She was Stanford Public Health Peer Educator, co-president, director of an anti-sex trafficking documentary, and wrote U-Visa statements at the Bay Area Immigration Institute. Most memorable was studying abroad in Madrid, where she worked at a women-owned veterinary clinic and met incredible people. Chelsea will continue human rights advocacy work as a Stanford Ford Fellow and plans to become a human rights and immigration attorney. Emma Barossa is from Glendora, California. She specialized in international security, learned German and Russian, studied abroad in Germany, minored in data science, and graduated with interdisciplinary honors in international security studies. She was a Hoover Wargaming and Crisis Simulation Research Fellow, an intern at the NATO Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence, and presented her research on British Second World War era anti-submarine tactics at the Bletchley Park National Intelligence History Conference. Most memorable was having an hour-long roundtable discussion with Prime Minister of Albania, Edi Rama. Emma will attend graduate school and then pursue a career in defense and security challenges. Josie Barton is from Seattle, Washington. Josie is the daughter of Stanford Board of Trustee member and class of 1989 alumnus Richard Barton, who will present Josie with her diploma. Josie specialized in international security, learned Spanish, studied away in Spain and Washington, D.C., minored in Spanish, and graduated with distinction. She was a tour guide, a member of Stanford Club Soccer, a sociology researcher, and was awarded the Duke Sanford School of Public Policy Global Policy Fellowship. Most memorable was doing ethnographic field research at the Santa Clara County Hall of Justice plea hearings. Josie plans to work in carceral reform and law. Nicole Ben-Alcazar Pavlik is from Los Altos Hills, California. She specialized in international security, learned Spanish and Arabic, studied abroad in Jordan, and minored in human rights. She received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence and graduated with interdisciplinary honors in international security studies. She was vice president and worship leader of Chi Alpha, an intern at the Kosovo Specialist Chambers in The Hague, and a member of Los Salceros de Stanford. Most memorable was being baptized in the Old Union Fountain. The water was freezing, and she didn't change into warm clothes right away and got sick, but it was worth it. Nicole will continue studying Arabic in Jordan next year. Devin Boomralkar is from Los Altos, California. He specialized in comparative international governance, learned German, studied abroad in Germany, and minored in economics. He received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence and graduated with distinction. He was president of Stanford Real Estate Club, director of university partnerships at Stanford and Government, and a Stanford Alumni Council member. Most memorable was studying abroad in Berlin and experiencing a new culture, learning a new language, fully immersing in history, art, and music, and making friends for life. Devin will continue to work in commercial real estate development for Hines in New York City. Alex Borthwick is from San Diego, California. She specialized in international history and culture, learned Arabic and Spanish, studied abroad in Chile, double minored in human rights and Middle Eastern languages, literatures, and cultures, and is co-terming in public policy. She received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence and graduated Phi Beta Kappa with distinction and with interdisciplinary honors in democracy development and the rule of law. She was a resident assistant for Rinconada and Mars, a Hume Center peer writing tutor, and a course coordinator at the Bridge Peer Counseling Center. Most memorable was being a Frosh RA, supporting other Frosh in their transition to college. Alex will study Arabic on a critical language scholarship at the American University of Cairo next year. David Bornat is from Houston, Texas. He specialized in international security, learned Spanish, studied abroad in Spain, and minored in economics. He was a sports broadcaster at Stanford KZSU Radio. Most memorable was taking Tom O'Keefe's The Political Economy of Southern Cone Countries in South America, which sparked his interest in global affairs and inspired him to major in international relations. David plans to work as a business analyst at Capital One in New York. Marin Brandt is from Fresno, California. She specialized in environment, energy, and natural resources, learned French, studied abroad in France, and graduated with distinction. She was artistic director of Stanford Swingtime, research assistant with the Deliberative Democracy Lab, a student ambassador with the Bill Lane Center for the American West, and a member of the National Political Science Honor Society. Most memorable were the late nights at Lank Log, when she took a break from studying, hung out with friends, and saw the stars. Marin will pursue a master's in biodiversity, conservation, and nature recovery at Oxford University. Zoe Bumstead is from Seattle, Washington. She specialized in economic development, world economy, learned Spanish, studied away in New York and Spain, and minored in Spanish. She was vice president of member experiences for Phi Beta Phi, a member of the Kiro Hiva Hawaiian Dance Club, and a growth and recruitment intern at Fizz. Most memorable was immersing herself in a new culture and language on homestay in Madrid. The experience pushed her out of her comfort zone and improved her Spanish. Zoe plans to work as the chief of staff for Palo AI, assisting with the company's growth and international expansion. Yeah. Ashley Salata is from Long Beach, California. She specialized in social development and human well-being, learned Spanish, studied abroad in South Africa, minored in comparative studies in race and ethnicity, and received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence. She was a student worker at El Centro Chicano y Latino, a resident assistant at Casa Zapata, and a worship leader of Chi Alpha Christian Fellowship. Most memorable was driving down Palm Drive and around the Oval with friends and music blasting. Ashley will be a human rights intern at the Center for Gender and Refugee Studies in San Francisco and then complete a public policy fellowship with the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute in DC. She plans eventually to attend law school. Matthew Charles is from Irvine, California. He specialized in international security, learned Spanish, and studied abroad in Chile. He was a research assistant for the Shorenstein Asia Pacific Research Center and the Center for International Security and Cooperation, and was the alumni chair of the Kappa Alpha fraternity. Most memorable was attending FSI talks and sitting as an equal among the esteemed guests, fellows, and professors. Matthew plans to work as a research analyst in the private or public sector. Remy Charles is from Laguna Niguel, California. She specialized in comparative international governance, learned French and studied abroad in France, and minored in European studies. She was a CDDRL research assistant, participated in the Schuman Challenge at the EU delegation, and a European Parliament intern. Most memorable was participating in the Stanford US-Russia Forum, where she analyzed Russian social media propaganda with 2 Russian students and presented her findings to a global audience in Prague. The experience reaffirmed her commitment to pursuing international relations and human rights work. Remy plans to work for a human rights NGO and then attend law school. Carissa Cheng is from Culver City, California. She specialized in East and South Asia, learned Taiwanese, and studied abroad in Italy, Taiwan, and South Korea. She received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence, graduated with distinction and with IR honors. She was co-chair of Stanford's Taiwanese Cultural Society and dance captain of Stanford Extreme. Most memorable was participating as a frosh in structured liberal education, where she studied literature and philosophy with brilliant, humanities-minded peers and met some of her closest friends. Carissa plans to work on the Hill and perhaps pursue a career in policymaking. Olufemi Cole is from Charlotte, North Carolina. He specialized in economic development, world economy, learned Spanish, and studied abroad in Spain. He was Stanford track and field captain and 2-time academic All-American, a Stanford Nigerian Students Association member, and the Black Student Athlete Organization executive treasurer. Most memorable was taking global drug wars with his awesome faculty advisor, my esteemed colleague Robert Cruz, because he enjoyed the course material and cooperative nature of the class. Olufemi will work in asset and wealth management at Goldman Sachs in New York City. Aya Daisy is from Lewes, Delaware. She specialized in comparative international governance, learned French, studied away in France and Washington, D.C., and minored in human rights. She was a member of the Community Service and Black Love Committees with Stanford Black Student Union and vice president and chair of the Advocate for Social Justice Committee with Kappa Alpha sorority. Most memorable was meeting incredible people, including her best friend Benita, and studying abroad, which enabled her to visit Europe for the first time, live near the Champs-Élysées, and watch the Eiffel Tower sparkle each night. Aya will live in D.C. for a year and then pursue a master's in library science. Valentina del Soler is from Santa Ynez, California, and Lima, Peru. She specialized in international security, studied abroad in Spain, minored in Spanish, and was awarded an advanced proficiency notation in Spanish. She was an advocate for human rights intern and a member of Stanford in Government and Stanford Women in Politics. Most memorable was her IR policy practicum capstone. She enjoyed bonding with classmates, visiting the Accountability Council office in San Francisco, and contributing to work that advanced the Community Partners mission. Valentina will pursue a master's in international relations at the London School of Economics and Political Science. Helen Deng is from Chongqing, China. She specialized in East and South Asia, learned Japanese, studied in New York, and graduated with interdisciplinary honors in the arts. She was a Stanford Japan Exchange Conference officer, a documentary development intern at ARC Media, and a King Center summer researcher in the Nordics. Most memorable were the rainy winter quarter days when she would put on a jazz playlist and draw a new page. In her graphic novel, Helen will pursue a Master of Arts in Japanese Studies at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. Noelle Diamond is from Dallas, Texas. She specialized in international security, learned German and Mandarin, studied abroad in Germany, and minored in German studies. She was a residential assistant, a board member of Stanford Pre-Law Society, and a member of Stanford Women in National Security. Most memorable was living with her Berlin host family and attending the Berlin Ballet and open-air concerts at palaces in Potsdam. Noelle will conduct research at Free University in Berlin and eventually attend law school. Sophie Donnellan is from Chicago, Illinois. Go Cubs. She specialized in environment, energy, and natural resources, learned French, studied away in France and Washington, D.C., and minored in French. She received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence, graduated with distinction, and with interdisciplinary honors in international security studies. She was a Stanford Model United Nations team captain and interned for environmental enforcement at the U.S. Department of Justice. She received a Cardinal Service Notation Best Delegate Award at Model UN conferences in Germany and Canada, and was a French Honor Society member. Most memorable was having the honor of translating for Madame Boucher-Ferry, the mayor of the French Polynesian island of Haurangi, while participating in Stanford at Sea. Sophie plans to work in climate security and eventually attend law school. Shefali Doshi is from San Diego, California. She specialized in social development and human well-being, learned Spanish and Hindi, studied abroad in Spain, and minored in data science. She was a Frosh RA at Castaño, a teaching coordinator at Stanford Flying Treehouse, and a Stanford Community Engaged Learning Coordinator. Most memorable was attending Stanford Diwali and Holi with friends and becoming more connected to her South Asian culture. Shefali will work as an elementary educator through Teach for America Bay Area before pursuing a career in human rights law. Adrian Feinberg is from Berkeley, California. He specialized in comparative international governance, learned Mandarin and German, studied abroad at Oxford, and double minored in history and media and film studies. He received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence and graduated Phi Beta Kappa with distinction and with interdisciplinary honors in democracy, development, and the rule of law. He was editor-in-chief of the Stanford Journal of International Affairs, a member of Hammarskjöld House Co-op, and a member of Stanford U.S.-Russia Forum. Most memorable was interning in Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina. Adrian will conduct research as a James C. Gaither Jr. Fellow in the Democracy, Conflict, and Governance Program at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace.
Karatina Fakade Tassima is from Seattle, Washington. She specialized in economic development, world economy, learned Amharic and Italian, studied abroad in Italy, and minored in data science. She was awarded Exceptional Achievement and Crossfield Black and Coley Achievement Awards by the Stanford Black Community Services Center. She was marketing coordinator for the Stanford Women in Finance, communications coordinator for Stanford Ethiopian and Eritrean Student Association, and a J.P. Morgan intern. Most memorable were the simple moments living on campus, especially having meals, studying, and late-night chatting together with friends. Karatina will complete her coterm in management science and engineering. Camila Mercedes Fermin Mata is from Sarasota, Florida. She specialized in social development and human well-being and learned French. She was a Cardinal Fellow and summer intern for the I Have a Dream Foundation, Vice President of Community Relations at Delta 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 Sorority, and Fellow and Coach of the Marshall Gantz-inspired Leadership Organizing and Action Project at Stanford. Most memorable was representing a nation-state in a non-proliferation treaty simulation in Professor Scott Sagan's class. Camila eventually plans to attend Georgetown Law. Zhenwei Gao is from Rancho Cucamonga, California, and Dalian, China. She specialized in international security, learned Spanish, studied away at Oxford and in New York, and is co-terming in public policy. She received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence and graduated with interdisciplinary honors in international security studies. She was video managing editor for the Stanford Daily, a Mayford Fellow, and a member of the National Political Science Honor Society. Most memorable was the Outdoor House Lake Log Triathlon, when she raced a quarter of Lake Log lap underwater. Zhenwei will work this summer at Meta and Mercor and plans to pursue a career in tech policy and US-China relations. Helena Gedahun Hawkins is from Bethesda, Maryland. She specialized in social development and human well-being, learned Spanish, French, Amharic, and Chinese, studied in Spain, and minored in Spanish. She graduated Phi Beta Kappa and with distinction. She was the president of Stanford Ethiopian and Eritrean Students Association, an advising fellow with Stanford Matriculate, and was awarded the 2025 Daniel Pearl Journalism Internship. Most memorable was studying abroad in Madrid because everything was new and exciting. She loved walking everywhere, sitting in the park, and eating gelato. Helena will complete her co-term in journalism and pursue a career as a foreign correspondent. Ari Gibson is from Charlotte, North Carolina. She specialized in economic development, world economy, learned Spanish, French, and Arabic, studied abroad in France, and minored in economics. She received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence, graduated with IR honors, and her thesis won the award for Excellence in Honors thesis presentation. She was a Stanford cheerleaders team captain and Alpha Kappa Alpha president. During her presidency, her chapter was recognized as the university's Black Volunteer Student Organization of the Year. Most memorable were her younger sister's campus visits and introducing her to the Stanford community. Ari will be a private equity analyst at McKenna Capital. Luke Girao is from Manila, Philippines. He specialized in economic development, world economy, and learned Korean and Cantonese. Most memorable was meeting a wide range of people at Stanford, each so unique in their passion, background, interests, and life perspective. Luke plans to pursue business through startups and entrepreneurship, ideally creating his own Bay Area startup. Saskia Girao is from Manila, Philippines. She specialized in economic development, world economy, and studied Korean and Cantonese. Most memorable was hanging out at Coupa, meeting so many interesting and smart people, and getting initiated into her Pi Phi sorority. Saskia plans to start her own company in a tech or tech-adjacent field. Jana Gomri is from Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. She specialized in environment, energy, and natural resources, learned Arabic, German, and Chinese, studied abroad in Germany, and minored in German studies and biology. She was a member of Stanford Women's Rugby and the Stanford United Nations Association. Most memorable were laughing with brilliant friends, making a few questionable decisions, and growing immensely during her time at Stanford. Jana will complete her co-term in biology and then move abroad to pursue a career in environmental policy. Piper Holland is from Portola Valley, California. She specialized in social development and human well-being, learned Spanish and German, studied abroad in South Africa and Germany, and minored in film and media studies. She was admitted to the National Political Science Honor Society and received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence. She was lead ambassador for BOSC, a Hoover National Security Affairs Fellows Program mentee, a Cape Town Black Filmmakers Film Festival intern, a Kids with Dreams buddy, and a ski team member. Most memorable was having her lunch stolen by baboons on a hike in Cape Town. Piper will intern at the Island School in the Bahamas and pursue a career as a Foreign Service officer and United Nations ambassador. Crystal Jauregui is from Visalia, California. She specialized in social development and human well-being, learned Spanish, studied abroad in Spain, and minored in feminist, gender, and sexuality studies. She was involved in Student for Workers' Rights and Stanford Hermanas, an intern at Landesa, and participated in the IR Capstone Policy Practicum with Accountability Council. Most memorable was her study abroad experience in Madrid, because she had the opportunity to engage with new people, culture, and experiences. Crystal will gain work experience during a gap year before attending law school. Elizabeth Jerstad is from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. She specialized in international security, learned Russian and Spanish, studied abroad in Spain, and graduated with interdisciplinary honors in democracy, development, and the rule of law. She was awarded State Department Critical Language and Foreign Language and Area Studies Fellowships for Russian and received the Alumni Association Award of Excellence. She was co-president for Stanford ABLA, assistant principal second violin for Stanford Symphony Orchestra, and a member of Stanford U.S.-Russia Forum. Most memorable was participating in BOSC Madrid because it was her first experience living abroad, and she remains very close with her host family. Elizabeth plans to complete her co-term in Russia, Eastern European, and Eurasian studies, and then attend law school. Michelle Ikenma Kalu is from Dallas, Texas. She specialized in Africa, learned Zulu and Igbo, studied away in Ghana, Kenya, and Washington, D.C., and double majored in African and African American studies. She was vice president of the Nigerian Students Association, cultural show committee chair, and president of the Stanford African Students Association, and choreographer of Shaku African Dance Team. Most memorable was the BOSC's Global Seminar in Accra, Ghana, where she saw the intersection of her two majors, explored a country she always wanted to visit, and met her best friends. Michelle plans to do advocacy work in Black communities through civil and human rights law. Malaina Kapoor is from Redwood City, California. She specialized in international security, learned Italian, and studied away in Italy and Washington, D.C. She graduated Phi Beta Kappa with distinction and with interdisciplinary honors in democracy, development, and the rule of law. She was co-author of Defiant Dreams, a narrative nonfiction book about women's rights in Afghanistan published by Penguin Random House. She was also founder and director of Women in National Security at Stanford's Gordian Knot Center and a White House intern in the Office of Speechwriting. Most memorable was playing Contessa in Stanford's production of The Marriage of Figaro. Malaina will attend Harvard Law School after a 2-year deferral. Kate Kingsley is from New York City. She specialized in Latin American and Iberian studies, learned Spanish, studied abroad in Spain, and double minored in psychology and theater and performance studies. She was a researcher with Stanford's Poverty, Violence, and Governance Lab, and an intern at the International Crisis Group in New York City. She was a Cardinal Ballet Company member and a Kids with Dreams volunteer assisting in special needs dance classes. Most memorable was creating a family literacy program for recently migrated mothers and their children through the Rosalie Rendu Center. Kate will teach bilingual elementary school in New York City with Teach for America and then attend law school. Ben Kingston is from Amherst, Massachusetts. He specialized in economic development, world economy, learned Spanish, studied abroad in England and China, and minored in data science. He received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence and graduated with IR honors. He was a Graduate School of Business Research Assistant and worked for 2 summers with entrepreneurs in Africa through Stanford Seed. Most memorable were studying abroad in Oxford and China and working on development projects in sub-Saharan Africa, experiences which perfectly complemented his IR degree. Ben plans to attend graduate school and pursue a career in international law or finance. Jaden Korth is from Clovis, California. She specialized in international security, learned French and Italian, studied abroad in France, minored in creative writing, and graduated with honors in the arts. She received a Haas Cardinal Quarter Fellowship and director of the Stanford Pre-Law Society Mentorship Program. Most memorable was attending a roundtable with AI law experts and technology innovators at Stanford Law School. With me. Jaden will complete a master's in medical anthropology at Oxford and plans to attend law school. Cecilia Diploma is from Placentia, California. She specialized in international history and culture, learned Korean, French, and Turkish, studied abroad in Turkey and Estonia, and minored in music. She was a global studies intern with Vabamu, a curatorial intern with the Stanford Archaeology Collections, a soprano with the Stanford Chamber Chorale, and a string bass player for Stanford orchestras. Most memorable was touring with the Stanford Chamber Chorale to Hawaii, where she performed in the Royal Palace of Queen Liliuokalani. Cecilia will pursue a master's in museum studies at University College of London. Tiana Lakani is from London, England. She specialized in social development and human well-being, learned Mandarin, studied abroad in South Africa, and minored in comparative studies in race and ethnicity. She graduated with IR honors, and her thesis won the Firestone Medal and the Kennedy Prize for single best thesis in the social sciences. She was a member of Stanford Women in Politics and Stanford Women in Law, president of DEI Inter-Sorority Council, and founder of Unlearned Advocacy Collective for Inclusive Education. Most memorable was when new student orientation RAs shouted everyone's name to welcome them into the neighborhoods. It really made everyone feel at home in this super friendly environment. Tiana will work at McKinsey in New York and plans to attend law school. Julia Lasiota is from Lodz, Poland. She specialized in comparative international governance, learned Arabic and Japanese, studied abroad in England, and double majored in history. She participated in Summer Research College, was a Hoover Library and Research Assistant, and admitted to the National Political Science Honor Society. Most memorable was walking into her barren room in Flomo during international student orientation. She put so much effort into making the room feel like her own, and in the end, that room saw every up and down of her freshman year. Julia plans to complete her coterm in Russian, Eastern European, and Eurasian studies and pursue a PhD. Maya Lee is from Los Angeles, California. She specialized in social development and human well-being, learned French and Italian, studied away in Italy and Washington, D.C., and minored in art history. She graduated Phi Beta Kappa and with distinction. She was a Stanford and Washington peer advisor, an intern at the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia, and a King Center Research Fellow. Most memorable was her trip to New Hampshire during Stanford and Washington. She experienced the 2024 presidential primary atmosphere and spoke with Congressman Ro Khanna at the Biden campaign rally. Maya will work as a public sector analyst at Icaso Consulting. Anna Levenberg is from Swampscott, Massachusetts. She specialized in international security, learned French, studied abroad in France and India, and graduated with distinction. She was an FSI Israel Studies Research Assistant, a teaching assistant for the course, Israel Society Politics and Policy, and a seed intern in Bangalore, India. Most memorable was fountain hopping in the spring with her friends, between IR classes, of course. Anna plans to complete her co-term in public policy. Frederick Lin is from Roslyn Heights, New York. He specialized in East and South Asia, learned Chinese, studied abroad in China, and minored in art history. He worked at KZSU Radio and at the Oceans, Environment, and Science Bureau of the U.S. State Department. Frederick will complete his coterminal master's in Earth Systems and then pursue a career in law. Tesfa Madden is from Whittier, California. He specialized in environment, energy, and natural resources, learned Spanish and Amharic, and studied abroad in Spain. He received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence and graduated with distinction. He was programming director for the Society of International Affairs at Stanford and director general for the first annual Stanford Model United Nations Conference. Most memorable was traveling to Erfurt, Germany with the Model United Nations team and exploring a part of the world he had never seen with like-minded individuals. Tesfa will work as a park ranger at Yosemite and then return to complete his coterminal master's in sustainability science and practice, with future plans to pursue law. Amaya Marian is from St. Louis, Missouri. She specialized in international security, learned Mandarin, studied away in Turkey and Washington, D.C., minored in East Asian Studies, and received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence. She was the president of Black Student Union, a Hoover Institution research assistant, and a BOSP Istanbul student ambassador. Most memorable was taking a backpacking trip to Georgia and Armenia with the BOSP Istanbul cohort. The Caucasus Mountains are amazing. Amaya will do U.S.-China policy research work and then attend law school. Lindsay McCann is from Edina, Minnesota. She specialized in East and South Asia, learned Mandarin, studied abroad in South Africa, and minored in human rights. She received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence and graduated with distinction. She was awarded a Mandarin Critical Language Scholarship, was a King Center Summer Research Fellow in Jakarta, and president of the Society for International Affairs at Stanford. Most memorable was competing with the Stanford Model United Nations team in Erfurt, Montreal, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, Chicago, and San Francisco, which brought out her Machiavellian side and gave her some of her closest friends. Lindsay will edit a book on Afghanistan peace negotiations and continue her Center on Human Rights Virtual Tribunals work before completing her co-term in public policy. Stella Rose Meyer is from Portland, Oregon. She specialized in social development and human well-being, learned Mandarin, and studied abroad in China and Israel. She was vice president of the Jewish Student Association, resident assistant at Warehouse, and student representative on the Stanford Board of Trustees. She received the Heidi Chow Fund Scholarship for Mandarin Language Study and a certificate for Jewish Studies. Most memorable was organizing Sardines in Green, a weekly hide-and-seek spin-off in Green Library that has seared into her nose the musty smell of old books. Stella will complete her co-term in sustainability studies. Skylie Rose Mitchell is from Kayenta, Arizona. They specialized in social development and human well-being, learned Spanish, and studied abroad in Spain. They were a member of Cardinal Policy Group and Consult Your Community, and an employee of Robley Arts Gym. Most memorable was analyzing election violence as an intern in New Ireland, Papua New Guinea. Skyley will work with Mission Investor Exchange and plans to attend law school.
Michael Murray is from Lake Oswego, Oregon. He specialized in international security, learned Italian, and studied away in Italy and Washington, D.C. He received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence and graduated with interdisciplinary honors in international security studies. He was course creator of Space Law in the 21st Century, a research fellow for the Hoover Maritime Strategy Working Group, and a policy analyst for the Office of the U.S. Secretary of Defense. Most memorable was interning at a K-8 school in Accra, Ghana, as part of Stanford Seed. Michael will intern with the Judicial Reform Team Office of the Indonesian Supreme Court and the Indonesian Institute for an Independent Judiciary. Nkemjika Obi is from Enugu, Nigeria, and Mission, Kansas. They specialized in Africa, learned Igbo, studied abroad in South Africa, Ghana, and Jamaica, and received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence. They were president of Delta Sigma Theta sorority and won Far West Region Collegiate Soarer of the Year, were vice president of the Stanford African Students Association, and financial officer of Shaku African Dance Troupe. Most memorable was speaking on the status of women at the United Nations headquarters in New York and moderating panels during UN Commission sessions. Nkemjika will join a management development program at a B2B industrial company in Los Angeles and plans eventually to pursue graduate studies in law or business. Kosiyat Oripova is from Kuzan, Tajikistan. She specialized in international security, learned Russian and Arabic, and studied away in Washington, D.C. She was president of the newly established Stanford Central Asian Association, and most memorable for her was working on its establishment. Kosiyat plans to work in consulting in the Middle East. Sophia Rasso is from New York, New York. She specialized in economic development, world economy, learned Chinese and Italian, studied abroad in Italy, and graduated with interdisciplinary honors in democracy, development, and the rule of law. She was a 4-year member and captain of the varsity fencing team, awarded Pac-12 and ACC academic honor roles, and all conference and all regional athletic honors. She was head of corporate outreach for Stanford Women in Finance and a member of the National Political Science Honor Society. Sophia plans to work in equity capital markets at Morgan Stanley in New York. Davin Reddy is from Las Vegas, Nevada. He specialized in East and South Asia, learned Mandarin, and studied abroad in Taiwan and Hong Kong. He was a speaker series coordinator for the Asian American Activity Center, participated in Summer Research College, and was awarded the Stanford Heidi Chu Fund and Yang Qing Academy scholarships. Most memorable were running around Lake Lag and in Bay to Breakers, playing Mario Kart with friends, and studying in Hong Kong. Davin will intern at Riga Stratton's China Studies Center and plans to do international policy work focusing on China. Gabriella Reitz is from Grand Junction, Colorado. She specialized in international security, learned Portuguese, French, and Italian, studied abroad in Italy, and was an IR peer advisor. She received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence and graduated with interdisciplinary honors in international security studies. She was a New York City Commission on Human Rights legal intern, Stanford Journal of International Affairs editor, King Center research assistant, and Street Sense Media editorial intern in DC. Most memorable was attending the CSAC Honors College in Washington, D.C., and meeting influential people in foreign policy and international security. Gabriella plans to work in foreign policy or government in New York City. Isabella Severin Reyes is from Manila, Philippines. She specialized in social development and human well-being, learned Filipino, and minored in music. She was director of live events and production at the Arbor and a percussionist for Stanford Symphony Orchestra and Stanford Philharmonia. Most memorable was creating a startup called Daha, a lending platform for people wanting to rent or borrow things on campus. Isabella plans to pursue music and work at a music label. Paloma Ronis von Helms is from San Diego, California. She specialized in international security, learned Spanish and modern Greek, studied abroad in Spain, minored in human rights, and was an IR peer advisor. She received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence and graduated with distinction. She was financial officer of Stanford Women in Politics, a Spanish language tutor for recent migrants at Sequoia High School, and a Stanford undergraduate law review editor. Most memorable was studying abroad in Madrid, where she fully immersed herself in the language, history, and culture while working for a women's nonprofit. Paloma plans to attend law school after spending time working abroad. Layli Rossi is from South Pasadena, California. She specialized in international security, learned Farsi, studied abroad in South Africa and Qatar, excuse the playing, double minored in Iranian studies and data science, and received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence. She was a Hoover National Security Affairs Fellow, mentee, and a Middle East Council on Global Affairs Fellow in Doha. She wrote an op-ed in Doha titled Mediating Multipolarity, Qatar's Role in U.S.-Venezuela Negotiations, that was published by the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Most memorable was the morning of Beta Breakers, when Stanford students gathered at the Oval at 4 a.m. in crazy costumes and rushed down Palm Drive to catch the Caltrain to San Francisco for a day of chaos and silly fun. Layli will work in international human rights law. Jack Shalek is from Portland, Oregon. He specialized in Europe and Russia, learned Mandarin, Czech, German, Italian, and French, studied abroad in Italy, and minored in East Asian studies. He was head of international engagement for Stanford Democracy Day and interned with the Lisbon Council in Brussels. Jack will complete a master's in foreign service at Georgetown and pursue a career in international policymaking. Lindy Schroeder is from Andover, Maine. Massachusetts. She specialized in comparative international governance, learned Russian and German, and studied abroad in Germany. She was Stanford artistic swimming team captain and an SGS intern in Brussels. Most memorable were the many valuable lessons she learned studying and working in Riga, Brussels, and Berlin. Lindy will complete her co-terminal master's in public policy. Alex Selwyn is from Newton, Massachusetts, and Palo Alto, California. He specialized in international security, learned Italian, studied abroad in Italy, and minored in Italian. He was an intern for U.S. Senator John Ossoff in D.C., a summer associate for an Italian law firm in Milan, and admitted to the National Italian Honor Society. Alex will complete his co-term in public policy and pursue a career in foreign policy and diplomacy. Charles Shiner is from Toronto, Canada. He specialized in comparative international governance, learned French, and studied abroad in France and China. He graduated with distinction and interdisciplinary honors in democracy, development, and the rule of law. He was captain of Club Squash, research assistant at Hoover and FSI, and co-creator of Sustainable Societies Lab. Most memorable were Friday dinners at Alpine Inn with close friends. Charles will work as a geopolitical consulting analyst at Ergo in New York City. Aidan Singer is from Great Falls, Virginia. He specialized in environment, energy, and natural resources, learned Spanish, and studied abroad in Spain. He graduated with IR honors, and his thesis received the IR Honors Program Outstanding Thesis Award. Most memorable was doing field research in Patagonia in September prior to his junior year. Aidan will work this summer trading on the carbon markets and then complete his co-terminal master's in civil and environmental engineering. Max Solberg is from Etna, New Hampshire. He specialized in international security, learned French and Mandarin, studied abroad in France and China, and minored in East Asian studies. He received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence, graduated with distinction, and with IR honors. He was a BOSP Beijing student ambassador, a student co-founder of Stanford Diplomacy Lab, and an East Florence Moore Hall resident assistant. Most memorable was going to the big game during Frosh year with his entire dorm, even though Stanford lost very, very badly. Max will complete a master's in Asia-Pacific Studies at National Chengchi University in Taiwan on a Taiwan government scholarship, and then return to the United States to study geospatial intelligence and eventually work at the nexus of cartography and public policy. Asukulu Songolo is from the Democratic Republic of Congo and Portland, Oregon. He specialized in Africa, learned French, studied abroad in France, and received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence. He was president of Stanford African Students Association, committee chair for Stanford Black Student Union Black Love, and core team member for Stanford Fashion X. He was awarded the Institute for Diversity in the Arts Lyric McHenry Community Arts Fellowship and the Jordan Wing Scholarship. Most memorable was studying in Paris, where he made connections with students across class years and discovered a new city on a different continent. Asukulu plans to continue developing his fashion brand, Lo Ondo. Johan Sotelo is from Truckee, California. He specialized in Latin American and Iberian studies, studied abroad in Spain, and received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence. He was director for Stanford Concert Network and financial officer for Stanford Ski and Stanford's Theater Lab. Most memorable was welcoming the class of 2027 to Stanford as a new student orientation coordinator and giving the student speech at convocation. Johan will be CEO of Stanford Student Enterprises and financial manager at Associated Students of Stanford. Audrey Suarez is from Pasadena, California. She specialized in social development and human well-being, learned Spanish, and studied abroad in Costa Rica. She was a 4-year Stanford varsity track and cross-country athlete, a coach and instructor for Stanford Habla, and a responder for the Immigration Detention Center hotline. Audrey will study abroad in Madrid and then pursue a master's degree while finishing her final year of NCAA eligibility. She will also work at an experiential sports marketing company that uses sports as a platform for promoting wellness and building cross-cultural connections. Reina Talvar Bhatia is from Mumbai, India. She specialized in international security, learned French, and double majored in bioengineering. She received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence, graduated with distinction, and with interdisciplinary honors in international security studies. She was the academic chair for Tau Beta Phi, a global policy intern, and received a tech ethics and policy fellowship. Raina plans to complete her co-term in bioengineering. Noah Tan is from Stevensville, Michigan. He specialized in international security, learned Chinese and Spanish, studied abroad in Chile, and minored in music composition. He was the student baccalaureate speaker, received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence, graduated with distinction, and with interdisciplinary honors in international security studies. He was coxswain for Stanford Men's Rowing, president of Stanford Pre-Law Society, co-editor-in-chief of Stanford Journal of International Affairs, and was admitted to the National Political Science Honor Society. Most memorable was hiking to Pacifica and eating at the famous Taco Bell Cantina on a SIAS board retreat, because as a student athlete, he could never go on overnight dorm trips. Noah will be a Gaither Junior Fellow in Technology and International Affairs at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, after which he will complete his co-term in public policy and then attend Harvard Law School. Mikey Tupaz is from Los Angeles, California. He specialized in East and South Asia, learned Japanese, Korean, and Italian, studied abroad in Italy, minored in linguistics, and received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence. He was co-chair for the Filipino American Student Union and student fellow for the Hoover History Lab. Most memorable was dancing and singing with his friends at Stanford's Filipino Culture Night, because he felt so much joy expressing the beauty of his language and cultural heritage to the larger Stanford community. Mikey plans to pursue a PhD in Philippine history or linguistics to continue advocating for linguistic justice and language policy reform in the Philippines. Leela Vanderberg is from Pacific Palisades, California. Leela is the goddaughter of Professor Amy Ziegert, who will present Leela with her diploma. Leela specialized in international security, learned French, studied abroad in France, and received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence. She was a teaching assistant for Dr. Robert Rakove, co-president of the Business Association of Stanford Entrepreneurial Students, team captain of intramural volleyball, and participated in an HAAS Cardinal Service Corps. Most memorable was studying in Paris. The faculty were kind and welcoming, and she was able to take art classes and teach English at a French primary school. Leela will complete her master's in public policy and plans to attend law school. Linda Vera is from Haltom City, Texas. She specialized in international security, learned Spanish and French, studied abroad in Spain, minored in human rights, was an IR peer advisor, and received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence. She was president of Hermanas de Stanford and a 4-year Hispanic Scholarship Fund recipient. A Hoover Education Team research assistant, a Bay Area Partnership for Climate Justice Fellow, and a Stanford Women in Law Committee Chair. Most memorable was organizing on and off-campus events for the Latina communities to give back to them the uplifting support they gave to her as a first-generation Latina. Linda plans to pursue international human rights law. Nathan Viotti is from Menlo Park, California. He specialized in social development and human well-being, learned French, Italian, and Arabic, and studied abroad in France and Italy. He received a Jane Stanford Fellowship, interned at the International Fund for Public Interest Media in Paris, and at the U.S. House of Representatives. Most memorable was studying in Paris and Italy, traveling to many other countries, and deepening his fluency in French and Italian. Nate will complete his communications coterm and pursue a career in media development or AI policy. Saba Weatherspoon is from Ithaca, New York. She specialized in social development and human well-being, learned Tigrinya and French, and studied abroad in France and Taiwan. She received scholarships to the Richard Tapia and Afrotech conferences and was awarded the Crossfield Black and Coley Achievement Award by the Stanford Black Community Services Center. She was program chair for Stanford Black Scientists and Engineers, a math and computer science tutor for the Athletic Academic Resource Center, and a singer on the InterVarsity Christian Fellowship worship team. Most memorable was building community across class years through dancing with the Ethiopian and Eritrean Student Association in the African Students Association's annual cultural show. Saba will complete her master's in computer science and pursue a career in technology and AI policy. Valencia Su is from Livingston, New Jersey. She's specialized in international security, learned Spanish, minored in sociology, and will study abroad in Spain. She was two-time Stanford women's tennis team captain, an academic All-American, and a three-time Pac-12 tournament champion and Intercollegiate Tennis Association scholar athlete. She was a Hoover Wargaming Simulation Student Fellow and worked at the Santa Clara County Public Defender Office. Most memorable was her last home tennis match on senior day. It was bittersweet to celebrate a lifetime of dedication with the people who know her best, and to be excited about moving on to a new chapter with the opportunities Stanford has afforded her. Valencia will take a gap year and then attend law school. Yaqub Yassin is from London, United Kingdom. He specialized in social development and human well-being, learned Spanish, studied abroad in Chile, and received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence. He was a Stanford Seed intern and a member of Stanford Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Stanford Markaz, and Stanford Bangladeshi Students Organization. Most memorable were the friendships he made, his capstone project, making clothes and magazines, his study abroad in India that led to travels in Southeast Asia, and his design class trek to Saudi Arabia. Yaqub will pursue a career in consulting and hopes to launch his own fashion brand.
Hello, everyone. We're almost there. I'm Paul Festa. I'm the IR Associate Director. This is Stephen Bussey, IR Student Services Officer, and Olivia Williams, IR Program Associate. We want to redirect attention for only a minute to our host, Professor Ken Schultz. At the end of this summer, Professor Schultz will step down as IR Program Director after serving 2 3-year terms. Professor Schultz will pass the director baton to his colleague, Professor Steve Stedman, who is on stage with us today, as he is every year. On behalf of IR students and instructors, we would like to extend to Professor Schultz a heartfelt thank you for his tireless dedication, inspiring leadership, and formidable wisdom and expertise. As our students well know, Professor Schultz is also a star teacher, and as Professor Diamond mentioned, it was announced this week that Professor Schultz has been awarded the Gores Award, Stanford's highest award for teaching excellence. As a token of our deep appreciation, we would like to present to Professor Schultz a photo signed by IR students and instructors we hope conveys a sense of what he has meant to the IR program.
Thank you for that. Really appreciate it. This is bittersweet being my final IR commencement to preside over. So one last round of applause for our graduates. So in addition to the diploma cover, they've received some IR branded swag, including a passport case and a luggage tag. These gifts symbolize our hope that you will go away, explore the world, and always come back to visit us here on the farm, where you'll always be welcome. As we close, I do want to thank our wonderful staff, Dr. Paul Festa, our Associate Director, Stephen Busa, our Student Services Officer, and Olivia Williams, our Program Associate. They've really supported these students throughout their time here, and they've worked tirelessly to make this program happen. Finally, I think it's fitting that our final act of recognition is for all of you out there, parents, relatives, and friends who have supported these students through their education. So on behalf of the IR program, its faculty and staff, on behalf of the class of 2025, thank you and congratulations.